So there's a few things I actually want to share with you guys. And one of that is the dynamic that we have with our parents. And this is my own experience, okay? I'm not saying that this is going to work for everybody, because it just might not. It might work for other people, but this is my own experience. So I started my healing journey. Like, I set the intention that I needed to do some work on myself back in 2018. And so I've been on this journey since then. 2020, my dad and I, like the beginning of that year, my dad and I would go out to breakfast or lunch. It was mainly breakfast though, and we would talk. There came a point in my time where I realized I needed to disconnect from my dad and do some healing on my own. And the reason being is because every single time I would meet up with him, I would try to bring up to him the issues that I had during my childhood. And he would always defend my stepmom. He never took my side. And that really fucking hurt me, because it made me feel like I wasn't being seen and I was just being dismissed. So I told my dad, I was like, hey, I need to do some healing. I was like, and I can't talk to you. So my dad, we didn't talk for probably a good year and a half. 2021 came around, the end of that year almost, like around October maybe. I had to move in with my dad because some stuff happened. And so I had to move in with my dad in his basement. And while I was there, I was severely triggered because I wasn't allowed to go upstairs. I wasn't allowed to use their washer. I wasn't allowed to eat their food. I had to provide everything for myself, which is cool. You know, that's fine. I was working at that time, so it wasn't a big deal. But in 2022, I got pregnant, and I was still in my dad's basement. And around August, it was either July or August, I quit my job because I couldn't, like, I was getting really sick. Like, I couldn't do it anymore. So I applied to food stamps, and I got my food stamps. So again, you know, eating wasn't that big of a deal. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. I think the most I struggled with was actually trying to get to like the grocery store because I didn't have a car at the time. So I was struggling. I had a lot of anger in my heart around that time. And I remember, I think it was in August. I don't know if this was before or after I found out I was having a boy. But sometime around that time of July, August, and September, I was going to the doctor. Oh, I was applying for WIC. So I was going up to WIC to apply. And I remember my mom came and got me. And she had told me, she was like, you know, I don't know if my dad had said something to her. I can't remember. But she was like, you know, I just called your dad just to check on you, and he got mad at me, basically, blah, 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 whatever. So I called my dad, and I was like, hey, you know, my mom's just calling because she's worried about me. She wants to make sure I'm eating, you know, blah, 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 whatever. And then him and I, you can tell he got triggered. So we started getting into this argument. Like, it was getting heated. And, so I got off the phone because he was starting to yell, and I was like, I'm not about to do this. Like, I'm not about to do this with you. Got off the phone and went into my appointment. And then after we left, we were probably there for like a good hour. After we left, we were on my way home, and we were probably like a good minute away from my home. And I remember it hit me right then and there, because for so long, the way that my dad treated me, I blamed it on my stepmom for a really, really, really long time. And I remember that day, it clicked in my head. It clicked in my body. That the way my dad acts is how he is choosing to. Nobody is forcing him to behave that way. That is him. That's all of him. And I don't know what, there was something that shifted in me in the way that I saw my dad. and the way that I saw my stepmom. Something started to change. And as time went on, and mind you, by that point in time, I was doing healing consistently. And so, you know, I would work on what I needed to work on within my own self, on what I could control, which is me and me only. I started to just really reparent myself and give myself that love that I needed, you know, back then. And so I was doing that for me. And it became easy to do that for myself. And honestly, I do think that having my son has really helped my connection with my parents, specifically my dad and my stepmom. I do genuinely believe that my son was like a catalyst. But as time went on, I started to, like, that anger that I had towards my dad and my stepmom started to dissolve. And it was easier to talk to my stepmom about things. My stepmom actually started to open up to me about things that she had experienced in her childhood that I never knew about. And so, yeah, you know, that just kind of started happening. I just let it happen on its own. I let it slowly happen. There was no pressure from either sides. And I had my son, and they were there. My parents were there. They treated me with love and kindness. And then I had to go back and move in with them for a few months after I had my son. And I was really, really, really depressed. I mean, I was down. Like, there was even a point in time where I was contemplating suicide, because it was what I was experiencing was just terrible. Not only was I dealing with depression, but I was going through some issues with the father of my son. And so I remember I wanted to commit suicide. It was around like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And I remember I went upstairs and I asked my parents, like, can we come up here and watch TV? Like, I'm just so stressed out, you know? And so went up into the movie room and I started watching the movie Soul. And that movie had been out for a while already. And it just never seemed like something, like, it never seemed interesting enough for me to watch it. And I remember putting it on and crying. I just bawling when I was watching it. Because if I remember correctly, the purpose of that movie was that a soul came down to earth to discover its purpose, basically, right? Like, what is my spark? And I remember, like, I can't remember the soul's name, but when the soul was down in earth with that guy, the soul was just enjoying the little things. The small things is what would make that soul so happy and content. And that something within me switched. Like, something within me that day just switched. And I started going hard for myself. I was still having problems, but I started going hard for myself. And eventually this is a mess. I moved out of my dad's house because it was still too much, you know. Moved out of my dad's house, moved in with my mom for a little bit. While I was at my mom's house, I realized that I really needed help. I needed external help. Like, this is something that I couldn't do on my own anymore. I needed the help. And so I reached out to a therapist, and I started my therapy last year in February. I want to say like the beginning of February. I started my therapy. And then about a month after therapy, I moved in with my baby daddy. I've been here since then. And our relationship has definitely improved since last year. honestly, since I've been with him at all, our relationship has improved a lot for the better. And that took a lot. Last year for our relationship was horrible. Absolutely fucking horrible. But as I was going to therapy, I realized that there was a lot of behavioral issues that I had within my own self. There's a lot of patterns that I had that I needed to break, because those patterns, those behaviors, they weren't healthy for me anymore. They were hurting me, and they were hurting people around me. And so as I got more into therapy, something last year switched, whatever, with my parents, with my dad, with my stepmom. Because now I was going over there. Obviously, I had the baby, so I would go over there and, we would hang out with the baby and stuff. But then my stepmom was opening up to me more about things. And she actually had mentioned to me how her mom would make her lose weight and how her mom would cut her hair short. And that was something that my stepmom did to me. My stepmom would always cut my hair short, and I fucking hated it. I never knew why. Like, why are you cutting my fucking hair? I had beautiful long hair. And she would, one day my mom gave me highlights, and my stepmom made me dye my hair. And two, I don't know if I would say I have an eating disorder. I've never gotten diagnosed with it, but I definitely struggle with body dysmorphia. And I think that a lot of that has to do with her, but also just being sexually abused. But she had opened up to me. And I remember when she told me, there was this, I felt compassion for her. I felt forgiveness, because it made me realize that a lot of us, we just continue these cycles. We just continue these cycles. And, something was passed down to her, so she passed it down to me. But guess what? That ends with me, because I'm never going to do that to my baby. And so, but when she opened up and she told me, I felt so much compassion, so much love for her, so much forgiveness for her. And we've just she'll talk to me about, certain things that are very hurtful and painful for her. And my dad has started to slowly open up too. And I remember what helped me switch. I remember I told my therapist, I was like, I feel like I'm unconsciously seeking my dad as a child. Like, I'm still looking at my dad as if I were still a little girl. I was like, and I'm like, I can't change what happened. I'll never be able to change what happened, And when I realized that I was unconsciously seeking my dad as a little girl, because I wanted my dad to see me, right? As this little girl still, apparently, that's when the dynamic with my parents changed. I shit you not. Oh my God. I can't even tell you. It was just phenomenal. The way that it just switched, phenomenal. Of course, it wasn't just oh my God, me and my parents get along so fucking great. No, there was a lot of work that I needed to do. Okay? They have their own work that they need to do, but guess what? I can't force that upon them. But when I started doing what I needed to do for me, man, it switched. Okay? And that's because I stopped seeking a connection with my parents from a child and parent connection. I'm not a child anymore. Yes, I am their child, but I am not a child anymore. And so when I started to see my parents as human beings, and I started to have empathy and just compassion. Having empathy and compassion for people, even when their behaviors aren't the best, I swear to God, is what will catapult you into different directions. About a month ago, maybe, I was on the phone I had called my dad for something, and then he called me back and we were talking, and he's like, I He's like, I want to say something. He's like, I've been thinking about it for a really long time. And he was like, I just didn't know how to tell you. And he told me he was sorry for everything. My dad has never, ever apologized to me for anything. Like I told you, my dad would always stick up for my stepmom. He would take up for her. And I was always just left feeling dismissed, or like what I went through wasn't important. And when he apologized to me that day, mind you, this was like about a month or two ago. When he apologized to me, it didn't even make me feel anything, because I just stopped wanting an apology from my dad. I accepted that I would probably never get an apology from my dad. And lo and behold, out of nowhere one day, he told me he was sorry. And I shit you not, my dad, he's never apologized to me. So I was like, whoa, surprised. But I had already accepted it, so it didn't make me feel anything. Like, it wasn't like this missing puzzle piece. Like, oh my God, I need my dad to be sorry for what happened. No, like, that didn't change anything, or it made me realize how fucking strong and courageous and just how vulnerable and I have become, and how, like, it made me realize, like, I don't need your apologies to continue on with life. I don't need you to apologize to me for what you did to me to heal. I didn't need it. It took me a long time to accept that I didn't need that. And I genuinely feel that because I accepted that within me, like truly, genuinely accepted that. I feel like I allowed for him to be able to apologize to me, if that makes sense. So I think that when a lot of us stop seeking that child and parent dynamic, I genuinely do believe that's when a lot of things start to shift. And you don't need an apology from your parents to move on and to heal. Because some people will get it and some people will never get it. So don't waste your time or your life waiting for anybody to apologize to you. So that's all I wanted to share. I thought it was really interesting. It's been really heavy on my mind in regards to maybe somebody else needs to hear this, and yeah, that's all I have. I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope you guys do something you love. Sit with yourself, y'all. Sit with those feelings. I know they're fucking uncomfortable, but that's the only way through. It's the only way through is to sit with yourself, to sit with the uncomfortable, to sit with the unknown.